Hello, my name is Jacob Toddson, and welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin. Today, we're going to be discussing the vision quest and what this means. But there's a lot to discuss here because there's a lot of layers. And I'm very cautious talking about this because it's not something that you should learn today and do tomorrow. This is something I've been prepping for quite some time, doing a lot of research on, and it is ultimately something that is dangerous and can be dangerous. And so please proceed in this video with caution. I do want to make this video for educational purposes. So in this video, we're going to be discussing the history of vision quests, their origins. We're also going to be talking about how to do them and how to do them the safest way possible. And not only are we going to be talking about it, but I'm actually about to start one myself. And while I'm not going to necessarily take you throughout the entire process, I'm going to show you a little bit of it along the way. So I'm really excited to talk about this. It's something that I've been, like I said, preparing for quite some time. So I hope you enjoy this video and this exploration and journey into the vision quest. So now let's get into the basics. What is a vision quest? At its core, a vision quest is 3 days, 3 nights of fasting. Now this fasting is simply no food, and you can drink water in the traditional setup of a vision quest on how they're usually run today. There are many different variations of the vision quest, and so I don't pretend like I'm sharing with you the only way. This just seems to be the standard way to do a vision quest. So this video is going to have a lot of disclaimers because this is something that can be dangerous. If this is something that really interests you, make sure you watch the entirety of the video, make sure you take your time and don't rush into this process. And make sure you're not alone in the process, which is why I got Herbie here. And so what you need for a vision quest is you need a buddy to do it with. This is something that's really big. Even though I'm filming and you can't see anyone else around at the moment, I'm doing this with my friend Jason. And the reason you have a buddy system is so that you can check in on one another. Even though you're going to be alone through the duration of the process, having someone that checks in on you and making sure you're okay at least once per day is really big into the safety of doing this vision quest. Having your partner out there, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to come to your camp, your area. What it means is you have a central camp. And so my partner and I that I'm doing this with, we chose an area near our location, about a half mile away from both of ours, that we have a common meeting spot. And then you build a small rock cairn. For us, we did circles, and then you leave some kind of sign for each day. And so we made like a little, tri-cut, a little peace sign. And so every single day we're going to fill one of those spaces with rocks or notes or flowers to signify that we're okay. And then if one of us doesn't leave a sign, that's when we go check on one another. We also made sure that our 2 places, while not having great cell phone reception, do have a little bit. And then of course, if you have a satellite phone, even better. And so in case something does happen, it's also recommended by myself and others that you do this with a guide. Now, we're not doing that because Jason and I have been a part of spiritual communities and doing things. I mean, shoot, him and I met doing ayahuasca. And so we feel pretty confident in ourselves, but we recognize that we're taking a risk by only doing it with 2 of us. And so what is the purpose of the vision quest? Like, what is supposed to happen? And that's kind of like the crazy thing is it really is just sitting out in nature, completely isolated and alone while fasting and just communing with the spirits. And you might be thinking, well, that sounds pretty boring. And you're correct. It's supposed to be boring. You're supposed to sit there in your thoughts and work on things and chew through things. The other big thing that happens on the vision quest is the vision. So when you sleep out at night, 3 days, 3 nights, and you start talking to the spirits of the mountain, of the valleys, the gods, your ancestors, you start screaming out to them while sitting out there isolated and alone. Theory, and in practice, what is supposed to happen is you receive a vision from the spirits. And there is a really good book I would recommend it's kind of like the go-to book. I'll place a picture right here and a link. It's just a vision quest book, I think. And it has a lot of really great resources. And I would highly recommend if you want to learn more, please read this book. I read it. It was kind of like a prerequisite for me to do this. And so that book I recommended, a lot of what you're going to read is based on Native American tradition from North America. And like many things when it comes to indigenous practices of North America and South America, it has been brought into neo-paganism, New Age movements, and it can be really hard to distinguish between what was the original source from the ancestors, from the people that came from these lands, and what has become New Age practices. And so that's something I'm definitely acknowledging in this video, is it is often hard to distinguish what is New Age, what is traditional, what is stuff that should be respected as indigenous practices. But I think the key word here is respect. And so going into a vision quest, knowing that this is something in the ancient past of the people of North America, it was something very sacred. It's not something that should be taken lightly. But also, having said that, the idea of fasting and communing with the divine, with the spirits, with God is something that is very universal, even though the practices we use today might be a little bit more on the indigenous side of North America. An example of this in Norse paganism and Norse mythology is the term utasita. Now, an utasita is something that we don't know that much about besides the actual definition of it, and a little bit of legend behind it as well. But an utasita was involving sitting out all night and communing with the spirits. It doesn't actually say that you fast as well, but the idea of sitting out in nature all night to commune with the divine was something that was part of the Old Norse traditions as well. Another thing I wanted to mention here is this term privilege. I struggle with this term because sometimes I think it can be used to put people down, but in the sense of the vision quest and food, I think privilege is a great word because we do live in privileged times, the majority of us, when it comes to eating food. There are, of course, starving people in the world, but even people in North America a few hundred years ago, people in Europe, were struggling to get 3 meals a day. And now we live in a time where the majority of people, particularly in North America, particularly in Europe and the Western countries and many places around the world, are used to 3 meals a day. We wake up and we expect breakfast, we expect lunch, we expect dinner, and there's a void in our life when we don't get those things. And we just have such abundance and ease and access to food now, for the most part. Many of us can just go to the grocery store, pick food out, pick meat out, pick vegetables out. We don't have to hunt our own meat. We don't have to raise our own livestock. We don't have to grow our own food. How a privilege of a time is that? That's pretty damn incredible. And I think we have lost sight of that. I know I have. Food has definitely been something that I take for granted. And so to actually step out and sacrifice food, I think is an acknowledgement of privilege. But I like to turn the privilege into gratitude. And I think learning to be grateful for what you have is such a powerful thing. And I know even after my 48-hour trial, 2 days no food, before I'm doing this vision quest, I was so grateful for every last bite of food. And so even if it isn't for the vision itself, I think the vision quest in general can help anyone get a better hold of their life. And I think a lot of times we think there's not enough time in the world, but then you spend 3 days alone without anything to do and you realize how much time there is in every single day, especially when you're not eating. I filmed a video really recently talking about the art of being alone and challenging people to be alone. And so if you want to look more into how to do this on a less intense scale than a vision quest, really recommend checking out that video, because I think even a few hours of isolation away from, our phones, away from distractions, can really help us deal with things such as anxiety and depression. Something like a vision quest is a much more intense version of this. And I mean, I've read stories, again, in that book of people going into this without little training and expectations, and it can be a really heavy experience. But what comes through the other side is something that brings you closer into who you're really meant to be and finding your true purpose in this world. And I think that's one of the most beautiful aspects of the Vision Quest and what it offers. So here we are back at the camp. So this is the night before our Vision Quest begins. I'll just share with you how I'm feeling right before. Because right now, my belly is full. We had dinner, just a couple of hours ago before we came up here. We didn't bring any food up here with us, and we just have water. We've started this small fire now, and we're just reflecting. I mean, obviously it's absolutely beautiful, besides the mosquitoes I thought weren't supposed to exist here in Colorado. But all up here tonight is going to be just an absolutely beautiful night sky. So I think a lot of this is just intentions. And if you would do this with a guide and a group, and you would have 10 or so people with the guides here, this first night would be a time to share intentions, share stories, reflect on your life and what's going on, and why you're going into this vision quest. I know I'm going to be able to do it. Like, it's one thing to know, like, I can starve for 3 days. I'm going to get through this. But to actually go through it, that's a whole nother thing. And yeah, I'm nervous to go through it, even though I know I'm going to get through it. But yeah, I think this is going to be a very powerful experience. I am nervous, I'm excited. I really don't know what to expect. But tomorrow I will show you a little bit of my campsite and my view and what I have and my setup and my kind of plan. And so I'll kind of talk for a little bit, but after that the camera's going off and I'm not going to report back until the very end of the Vision Quest. But with that, I think all that's left for me is to enjoy the fire, enjoy the evening and the night sky, and prepare for this vision quest. All right, I think I have everything set up the way I want. So I'm going to give you a quick tour of my vision quest camp here, and then that'll be it as far as the video, so I can just focus on this. And if you can't tell, I'm already out of breath. This is actually about maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So, you know, fasting and then the high altitude as well. So very tired, but really excited to share this with you because, I mean, it's been a lot of fun setting up. And I think the more I've set this up, the more that I'm realizing the power of the vision quest. So let me go ahead and give you the tour. So first off, I mean, I absolutely love this view. I mean, we have a storm coming in, which it might not even hit me. Storms here have been very sporadic. I've already had one go over, but didn't actually come near me. So, I mean, yes, obviously the view here, any vision quest you want to view. That's one of the main things I've learned from my research is you don't want to just do it in the middle of a forest. You want somewhere that is naturally beautiful so you can commune with nature. And this right here is a very special spiritual aspect of the vision quest. This is the sacred circle. And so each of these main stones aligned with the directions, each of the stones having a different thing tied to yourself. But for me, in the east, I have things associated with the sun. And then I have things associated with southern plant medicines. I'm going to add more, but I'm worried about the rain. And then I have stuff associated with the land and the spirits of the land. So I have my amulet, my statue to Jord there, and then a bone I found on this land. And then to the north, I have the Norse gods. This is also the Uppsala lineup. So this is Freyr, Thor, and Odin. So the three gods that we know were worshipped in Uppsala. So the idea behind the sacred circle is this is one of your meditation spots, but also a place to be rebirthed. And so we supposedly will feel called to come here to do ceremony. And so it's set up and ready for that when I feel called to come here and be reborn and feel the ceremony of the vision quest. And I guess the rest isn't too exciting. It's just survival stuff. So campfire, it needs to be quite small. And one of the things that's recommended, you don't really want a campfire for warmth. You only want a campfire for ceremony. And so I've only made one big enough to have like a ceremonial fire. And then of course my wood. Tarp is definitely necessary, mostly to protect from the sun. It's been quite hot today. And then here is, yeah, these are my sleeping arrangements. So nice, right? Hey, it's better than some Airbnbs I've stayed in. So yeah, that's it. That's my Vision Quest camp. I'm quite happy with it. You know, I had to set everything up, get all the wood, collect all the stones. This area is just so beautiful. To actually sit back and relax and enjoy nature. I have these big stone walls behind me here. And then look at this bad boy right here. It's absolutely beautiful. And when I first came to the spot, when we scouted it out, I saw that and I'm like, by the end of this, I'm gonna be talking to that like it's a god for sure. So yeah, there's a part of me that really wishes I would record more of this like the TV show alone because I think it would be beneficial to the viewers. But considering this is my first Vision Quest, I don't know what to expect. And I think it's going to be, you know, something that requires complete disconnection from YouTube, complete disconnection from, you know, technology. I think it's just best I turn the camera off at this point. But I'll leave you with the beautiful view now until I come back to you with my thoughts and feelings after doing the Vision Quest. So that was a pretty quick transition. I lost 16 pounds in 3 days. I actually put on about 7 pounds before I did this. I was just eating like a lot of biscuits and gravy and pancakes and things because I knew I needed to gain some weight in order to go through this experience. And I think, again, this is a great moment to a warning again throughout this whole process. This is something that you don't do tomorrow. This is something that takes weeks, months even, to prepare yourself for. And you do have to be in relatively good physical health. It's something that, you know, I think I've said in this video before, I'm going to put in the beginning, something if you have a good, you know, connection with your doctor to talk about them, they're interested in doing one and see what they think. Because I think one of the big, like, physical reflections is just how weak you become of 3 days just sitting there. And I mean, it would literally get to the point every time I would get up to use the bathroom, every time I would pee, I would be out of breath. I'd be sitting there just like, like every time I sat up, I would almost like black out. I was so dizzy. And like one of the hardest things is my camp was about maybe half a mile from our central camp where I had to leave the rocks for the partner. And then it was mostly uphill. So I think it was like 300 to 400 feet of elevation gain. My partner, his like Jason's, his was like, he moved his camp further up. His was like 1,000 feet. I don't know how he did it because I was so exhausted. I just dreaded the climb back up. I would take like 5 steps and 5 more steps. I mean, it doesn't help that we're like 10,000 feet up in elevation here in Colorado. But man, yeah, you're just so exhausted. Like I'd wake up in the morning, so I kind of had like a morning routine. I would brush my teeth, put on sunscreen, and just sit there and like reflect on the day, the previous day. And then you just look at the sun coming up, and you realize like, holy shit, I'm gonna sit here until the sun goes from there to over there. You don't know what time of day it is. Your only recollection of time is where the sun is in the sky. And honestly, it's quite maddening. And I think overall, this is one of the most intense and brutal things I've ever done. I wanted to give up a couple of times. I was just like, I really don't want to go through this. It was so hard. And yeah, it's mostly just the boredom. I mean, there was some great reflections. I'm going to get to the benefits here, but I really want to hammer in that this is really hard. I don't think I've ever talked about anything on this channel that is this difficult to do. But even ayahuasca, you're typically doing in like a group setting. This, you're doing it utterly alone. But let's get into the positives of the Vision Quest experience. So, why do you do it? What did I get out of this? And I think the best thing that comes out of it is a combination of reflecting on your life and memories and then performing the ceremonies and seeing where that takes you. There's a few ceremonies that are recommended in the Vision Quest book, including like creating a sacred space, a sacred circle, having, like a gratitude moment and a death lodge reflecting on, the people that would come to your funeral or your deathbed. And so there's a few in there. And then me being, already having a lot of spiritual things in my life, I would just kind of have this routine where I would do a small ceremony in the morning, and this ceremony involved being naked, because I mean you're alone out there, and so and yeah, Jason did this too. So I was just standing on this edge of this cliff, completely butt-ass naked, and I would do that for like the first hour or two of the day, and just be in myself. We don't often just get to sit there naked, and you're just kind of looking around, and like my legs and everything are banged up and scratched, and it's mostly from just wandering around my little campsite butt-ass naked. And I would always have my notebook nearby, and so if I was just laying there, a lot of times I was just laying there, sitting there looking at the view, unless it was too hot, and I would just sit there with my journal, and I would write. I would think of something, whether it was related to a relationship I had in the past, friendships, family members, or spirituality, and I would just write stuff down. And I think that was a big thing as well, just having time to sort out your thoughts, sort out your memories, sort out your life. Actually taking 3 days to do that. It's, one of the only things you can do is just sort your life out. And that's, something I think all of us need to some degree. And then in the evenings, I would do a very set amount of ceremonies. I would sit in my sacred circle. I would call to the directions. Each point in my sacred circle, as I showed you, I had a moment with the gods. I had a moment with the spirits, the southern medicines, my ancestors, the spirits of the land. And I would just kind of reflect on them and call to them. I also wrote down several songs and poems, and I would just sit there and sing over and over and over again. I mean, I sang in like the Cherokee language, I sang in Old Norse, I sang in English, I just sang and prayed to the spirits. I would also say that, like, even though it's called a vision quest for me, and it sounds like for Jason as well, the vision quest wasn't as visual, even though there was visuals. Like, you're not tripping, and that's something that even says in the Vision Quest book, is this isn't a trip. Like, you're not going to have like a hallucinogenic experience necessarily. But I would hear voices, and like, hear the voice of someone like, hey, come do this, you should do this. And it's like, oh, I thought it was my imagination. And then I realized, like, no, these are actually like voices of like nature, the spirits that I'm hearing. Overall, the entire thing is spiritual, but on the practical side of things, like, a lot of it is just sorting out your thoughts, your mind, and your life, and then having moments of gratitude, of prayer, praying to the spirits, and then, kind of seeing where that takes you and following your intuition. But then there's also moments of suffering. I think there's a lot of suffering involved here, simply to, honor the ancestors who suffered. We live, as I discussed earlier in this video, we live such different lives, such privileged lives in comparison to so many of our ancestors or other people in the world, for the majority of people watching this video. And so to give up food for 3 days and to suffer, I think is a really powerful offering in itself to the ancestors. I definitely wanted to give up at some point. About on the day 2, I was like, I feel like I got everything out of it. And day 3, man, that was the longest day of my life. I didn't realize how long a day could be until day 3. But coming out of the experience, I think it is something that if you are capable of, I think, in all honesty, I think it's something everyone should do. The ability to spend 3 days just sorting out your thoughts in your life, as you know, and offering and suffering, praying, I think it's a really powerful experience. But after sitting here right now, just a day-ish after the experience, I honestly don't know if I ever will do it again. It was brutal. It was intense. It was hard. I wouldn't say it was fun. I definitely had moments, you know, you reflect on yourself. But man, definitely, if it's something that interests you, take your time, don't jump into it. If your first thought is like, I want to do this tomorrow, you're already on the wrong path. This is something that you need to follow your intuition on. It's something you need to take your time on. It's something you need to do with a partner, something maybe you need to do with a guide. I think at the end of the video here, I will say, like, I do still feel called, even after doing this, to hold a vision quest. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. I know Jason and I have already talked about it. We might end up running one here in Colorado at some point in the future. May end up running one in Scotland, and then I may end up running one in Kentucky as well. So, I mean, obviously I've already made a lot of plans with people, but I'm not sure what it looks like yet. So it's something I'm thinking about. So make sure, I do have a website. So make sure you go to that website. Often, I probably should start a newsletter. That would probably be good, but I'll post it on YouTube. So just make sure you're subscribed and all that stuff. But it won't be until probably spring or summer next year that I'll look into running my own vision quests, if I do them. Like I said, it's something that is powerful, it's hard, it's intense, and it's something that will change your life. And I think for a lot of people who maybe haven't gone down that healing path as much, like I've been on the healing path for a very long time, and you know, I've worked out a lot of my stuff, but if you haven't done a lot of the healing work yet, it's going to be even more intense. And there's going to be even more things that come up. But thank you so much to Jason and his wife for inviting me down here to Colorado to participate in this vision quest, and for their hospitality. Truly, it's been an amazing time here, and just insane. Definitely one of the most insane, intense things I've ever done. So thank you so very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video here, The Wisdom of Odin.